Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to Versus Stars podcast. My loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Jeffrey W. Byrd boards the mothership. You know him as the director of the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode Under the Cloak of War. Come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Byrd. Thanks so much for coming to the Versus Stars podcast.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Doing very well, sir. How about yourself?
I am doing good. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, definitely my honor. Like I said, we're going to talk about one of your episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which was absolutely fantastic. So we'll get there in just a second. But I always start off with the question of inspiration. So what inspired your love for film and who your earliest influences?
What inspired my love for film and my earliest influence are the same human, Spike Lee. So Spike Lee inspired my love for film, and he has influenced me to the 10th power. I worked on Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever, and Malcolm X. I was a intern PA, and then Malcolm X. I was a trainee. I was an electrics trainee, so I was in the lighting department. And and this was like fresh out of high school when I started working with Spike. So he has been one of my major motivations in this industry, and he inspired me to like I said, the 10th power, the 100th degree, and it's great to know that I've come to a place where I started out as his intern and a PA, and now I'm a colleague. So that is amazing. I'm a colleague of his in the Directors Guild of America, and it's an amazing feeling. When I talk about it out loud, I get chills. I just got chills from because I never really say that out loud too much. But now that you just had me say it out loud, I was like, wow, that's my dream come true. Also, I just also it's kind of cool that we're two Jeffs here having this conversation.
Indeed.
It's Jeff squared. I just want to let you know that too. It's inspiring me that we're two Jeffs having this conversation.
It is a great name. It's the name of success, isn't it?
It is.
So I mean, Spike Lee. We all know Spike Lee. He's a legendary director. He's built up a resume for some decades now. So, yes. As a protege of his, what did you learn from watching him, experiencing what it's like watching him direct a film? Especially like I said, we're going to talk about Malcolm X in just a moment. What does that teach you?
Watching Spike direct was literally like it's like watching an orchestra, a concerto being, by the maestro. Just, Spike is that good. And what I love about Spike is he also imparts that information out. Almost so much so, because he's a professor at NYU, Tisch School of the Arts there, it's almost like school. When you work at 40 Acres, it's almost like school, because Spike will, come up to you and casually ask you a question, about what you're doing. And if you know what you're doing, whether it's the craft service person or, you're, dealing with some light on set, he'll casually, especially if he knows he hired you as an intern and you've come up through the ranks, he'll casually walk by and say, "Hey, Jeff, what you doing? What's that? What light is that? What do you call that?" And it was always a great, environment to learn. And he was also super supportive. But also Spike could be a hard taskmaster in the way of, if you don't know what you're doing, I'm scared. I'm scared for you. And, if you're not doing your homework on it, I'm scared for you also. And one of the main things that Spike really kind of influenced us as interns, and especially me, I really listened to, was he was like, well, make sure you travel. Travel helps to broaden your, horizons, your visual horizons, and your knowledge of people and how people do things differently in different areas and different countries, also in different states. Start as simply as going from outside your state. Spike was very big on traveling and getting new experiences, because that also inherently gets itself into your work.
Now, the one thing that makes Spike Lee so great and why he has become, like I said, that icon of a director, is that when he films or one of his films, it has like a signature to it. It feels like a Spike Lee film. So how did he impart that to you, and how to put your signature and unique voice into what you're filming?
That's a very good question. Yes, indeed. Every time you see a Spike Lee movie, it's a Spike Lee movie. And it's interesting. It's funny. there are some people, it's like, well, I like to, not have I like a director's signature. I like for people to just watch the movie. And then there are people like Spike and Chris Nolan and Spielberg. I mean, that literally you'll enjoy their films, but you also know you're watching a Spike Lee movie or a Steven Spielberg movie or a Chris Nolan movie. And so I learned that from Spike, a little bit of that. And I'm like, okay, I wanted to make sure every time I do something, there's a signature kind of a Jeff Byrd scenario to it. And a lot of it is so funny. A couple of people have noticed it. They're like, well, every time I watch Jeff stuff, there's this whole thing, and he's got there's an overhead shot that I kind of try to do at least in every show I do. There's like an overhead wide shot with a little bit of a clock to it. And I try to incorporate that in every episode or something I do. Whether it makes it into the show or not is not up to me. It's up to the showrunners, obviously. But I always make sure I try to shoot that. So I'm like, okay, what are you bringing to it? And also, the reason why I shoot that is because it's not just a haphazard scenario. I just pull that out of thin air. No, I just love doing overhead shots because it also gives you a sense of the whole entire world. And that's why I love doing, science fiction a lot too, is like you can see, a whole landscape, a whole world. And if you think about the great filmmakers that would do that, back in the past, like Lean and Ford, and, Coppola, you have these shots that are just, overhead and just really broad. Because mine overhead is not a direct overhead, so it's not flat. It's a slight overhead. It's slightly flat, but not. It's got a slight tilt to it. So you can see the vista, the view of whatever it is you're shooting. So I enjoy doing stuff like that. I love that Spike does his dolly shot in every single movie. I love that. Love that about Spike.
And I think another thing that makes a director great, and Spike Lee, obviously, for instance, on Malcolm X, which once again is one of the all-time great films. I absolutely love it. It has legendary actors like Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett, Delroy Lindo. I mean, it's a great cast.
Amazing cast.
Now, what makes a director, or one of the things that can make a director great, is the ability to work with a cast member and collaborate with them. So, in watching how Spike Lee worked with those actors, how did it teach you to work with the actors that you've worked with?
That's a very good question. Spike, the way he works with his actors, obviously, like I said, like you said as well in the question, I'm heavily influenced by Spike. And what I love to do is create a safe space, a safe environment for my actors, to know that when we're talking, it's us talking. And, and whatever comes out in that space is a sacred space. And, and then whatever direction or information I get from the writers that helps enhance what I've read and how I interpreted the script, I'm able to then impart that to the actors. But the first and foremost thing is creating a safe space for them to feel free to say anything, whether it's well, Jeff, I don't know how I'm feeling about this scene, and what do you think, and and then me guiding. For me with actors, it's really about guidance and not control, but guidance. And because a lot of them, most actors will read the script and know what it is, how they interpret their character, and be able to, fully, give you a full breakdown. Like when I'm on Yellow Jackets as the co-EP of Yellow Jackets and the director, which is called the producing director on a show. When I'm sitting there talking to Melanie Linsky or Christina Ricci or Tony Cypress, I'm able to, get a download from them, on who Misty is. Christina will tell me who Misty is to her in this moment. And I'll be able to say, oh, okay, gotcha. But here's how we're going to kind of craft Misty to fit this moment in what you said, but also we're going to add this other nuance to it because Misty doesn't know what's coming up later. But I do, and we do. But we don't want to give away that. So here's how we need to kind of work that. And Christina, whether it be Christina or Melanie or Tanya or Juliet, everyone will then go, oh, okay, Jeff, and then but that it's really because we created that safe space of conversation too, so that then they can then impart some things back to me. I can impart some things to them, and I can be like, oh, you know what, you're right on that. Let me rethink this little portion right here, and oh, you know what, you're right. I came up with this now because to talk about what you did, and that's the only way you can do it. When you create a safe space, that's the only way you can have those open air conversations so everybody can feel like they can speak. And that's what Spike does when he's on set. He creates a safe space, and especially in his rehearsals. and I've been there for some of the rehearsals, as a PA, getting coffee or bringing something in, waters and stuff like that. I've been able to see, some of his rehearsals with some of these named actors like Denzel and Delroy and all these folks, and just kind of watch and go, oh, I see how he does that. Oh, he's masterful at this. He's amazing at that. And I can only try to, reach that pinnacle as best I can. But that's kind of how he, at least how I interpret that he does.
So, I mean, when you work with an actor like Denzel, who, he's a phenomenal actor, he's and a superstar, is it difficult to approach him and be like, what you're doing isn't working right now? I mean, how do you approach an actor who, has been in that role for a while or has that reputation, and try to approach him and be like, I think you need to be doing it this way? Is that a difficult thing to approach? Or is it because you're the director, you just inherently have that kind of clout to feel like you can do that?
Well, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. So, okay, so I directed this film called Jasper, Texas, and it was starring Lou Gossett and John Voight and Joe Morton. And so that's two Oscars and a Golden Globe Award between the three of them.
Not bad.
So, Lou's got an Oscar, John Voight's got an Oscar, and Joe Morton's got a Golden Globe. So, so that was one of those situations that you're talking about. I can't speak to the Denzel at all. I've never directed Denzel. Obviously, Spike has. I watched him, but I wouldn't begin to speak to that because I'm not inside of what the relationship that Spike and Denzel have. But I can speak to this. So, having directed Lou and John, it was intimidating at first. I was like, "Oh, they're two Oscar winners. What am I going to say to Lou Gossett and John Voight?" So I remember one day on set, John came up to me and he was like, because I was like trying to dodge him, and it was like day one. I was trying to dodge all of them. Like, okay, well, we're gonna do this scene, and yada yada, and I try to go back to my seat and sit down and hope that they just talk it out amongst themselves. And they were like, "Well, Jeff, come over here. Come over here. You have to give us direction on this. You have to tell us what we're doing here." I was like, "Oh, you guys read the script. You guys know what you're doing. I'm just gonna, It's like, no. What do you want out of this scene? And that was my, and the thing about it is I usually had no issues giving direction, but these were two Oscar winners, and I was like, okay, so now you got to really strip all that away, strip the Oscars away, strip Officer and a Gentleman and the Deliverance and all the movies I've seen them in, Midnight Cowboy. I'll strip all that away, and these are two men now just two actors just looking for direction from their director. And I was able to drop into that, and then boom, from there we were off and running. So a lot of it is us as directors. We have to rid ourselves of that, whatever that is that we put on it to stop ourselves from talking to actors of that caliber. We have to literally strip ourselves of that, and that's what I had to do. And then go in there. Is it intimidating? Yes, it is intimidating. Is it scary? Yes, it's scary because you can say the wrong thing and then you could lose the trust and the respect of that actor. But you have to know and hear that you're saying and doing the right thing, and that you're able to, communicate it in a way that they understand, and then they'll gain even more respect for you, which is what happened between myself and Lou and John. And we were, tight for the whole rest of that movie, stemming from that first day of me, going, well, first I was intimidated by you guys, but then, okay, you say you want this direction, here it comes. And next thing you know, it all came out. And you all almost become like a different, it's almost like an out-of-body experience. And, I think about it a lot after the fact, and I go, did I say that? Did I do that? And they'll tell me, you said so-and-so to such and such, and you told such and such so-and-so. And yes, of course, on the set, you can be commanding and you can be all those things. But just to be an asshole for the sake of being an asshole is stupid. And there are, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously there are some asshole directors and asshole producers and asshole actors, and all the assholey things. But I find it doesn't work for me to be, an asshole, or to be angry, or to be like, my way or the highway kind of scenario, because you never know where the next greatest idea is going to come from, whether it comes from one of your actors, or you might just, hear it from a grip who's sitting there, or just, casually saying something like, oh, I would put the camera over there. Yeah, I overhear something like that. Because at the end of the day, it's still going to say directed by Jeff Byrd. And it's still going to say my name. And I mean, not that grips go around, giving out direction, because they don't. But mostly if you get a good idea from an actor, it's still, it's a viable conversation to have. It's not, going to make you any less of a director
Hmm.
if an actor comes up with, a good idea for a scene, or the DP does, or, or one of the producers who's sitting with you at the monitor. That also is that's why filmmaking is such a collaborative art form. Hence the reason it's called collaborative, because you as a director, you got to hear all of the things. So therefore you can figure out, what stuff you want to put in your collaboration.
So, I mean, as a director, you have a lot of people looking to you for literally direction. I mean, that's the title.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have everyone looking at you for the answers, for you to be in control of things, it's difficult to be vulnerable and say, I looking for, I want some advice on this. What do you think about that? Is that a difficult thing to do, or is that just part of the job?
It's literally just part of the job. I mean, I think it's only difficult in the beginning, but it is literally part of the job. And as directors, we just have to kind of step into that. And once you do it, like the first couple times, it becomes it's like a muscle. Yeah, and once you exercise it, and you get stronger. And every time you step on set, you can exercise that muscle.
Now, we're about to talk about Star Trek. Like I said, you direct episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and Strange New Worlds. Now, here you're a guest director on a show where the actors have been playing those parts for a while. I think you did season 4 of Discovery, and you did season 2 episode of Strange New Worlds. So those actors have inhabited those roles for a while and a style. So now you're stepping in saying, we're going to do it this way. Does that add an extra layer of boldness?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, yes and no. Okay, so this is a very good question. So when you come on a TV show versus a film, when you come on a TV show, everything is like you said. It's already established. Captain Pike is Captain Pike. Michael Burnham, Captain Michael Burnham is Captain Michael Burnham, and she's doing her thing. So and now you're I'm one of 10. So I'm one of 10 directors. And then you have to come in there with your little episode in your hand, or on your smartphone, or however you use it, however you digest the material, and go, okay, so here's what Captain Pike is doing in this episode. And then there's always going to be a conversation. There's always going to be a back and forth. There's always going to be a ping pong of ideas going back and forth, because first thing, as a director coming in on a show, you have to respect your actors knowing who their character is. They know who their character is. Anson Mount knows who Captain Christopher Pike is. So I can never tell him how to be a better Captain Pike, because he's already got that down. I could never, say, to Sonequa, how to be a better Michael Burnham, how to be a better Captain Michael Burnham. I could never do that. Only thing I could impart is, okay, so here's what Michael Burnham is going through. Here's what Christopher Pike is going through. And here's where I think, and also as a director, you had better have done your homework on that show. And when I say homework, meaning you better watched as many episodes of that show that has been available, so you can know their character too. Because actors will test you on that, unbeknownst to you. There'll be little tests that go on. If you say something, it's like, well, Jeff, Captain Pike, wouldn't do that, or didn't do that three episodes ago, or last season in so-and-so episode. There was an opportunity, yada, yada, yada. And, Michael Burnham she didn't do this thing, or she would not have. So you got to know, and then you have to go to your mental Rolodex, your mental file in your head, and pull up, that episode that they're talking about and say, well, actually, you're right, and Michael Burnham did this too, which kind of leads directly into where we want, her energy to be in this. And, Captain Pike did do this, which kind of leads into where we want, his energy to be in this scenario. And that will get you instant respect on the set once you know the episodes in which you speak, and you're able to give direction, not based on, what you want Captain Pike to do or what you want Captain Michael Burnham to do, basing it on what of course, obviously the showrunners, where the showrunners want the character to be, but conversationally, you have to couch that in, well, from what I saw, you're correct, but from what I saw, this is where Captain Pike hits this, and this is where Captain Burnham hits that, and this is where it's going to go after this. So it's just, from my recollection. So I think that's why the mood, for Captain Pike, or the mood for Spock, should be like this today, and you go from there, because you can't tell them how to be a better character, because they've got that down. I mean, you pointed out season 4, and I'm season 2, so they know.
I mean, the other thing as well is that when you're directing your episode, and I'm just guessing on this, but I mean, feel free to correct me. Other directors have been directing their episode, and you have not necessarily seen what those other directors have done for that season. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're right, but sometimes you can look at their dailies. Like you've not seen the edit because they're not available, but sometimes you can look at their dailies and get access to that. But even then, you don't know how it's going to be put together. So you are correct. So the best thing to do in that case is, if you do know those directors, sometimes I'll know the directors who have come before me, and I'll call them. I'll be like, hey, so Chris, what that episode that you did, before mine, two episodes before mine, I'm here on set now. How is that? Give me a little insight into where the characters are at. Also, I can read those scripts. Like, they will give you access to the script, so I can get scripts all day. So if I'm doing, for example, on Stranger Worlds, I did episode 8. So before I got there and did episode 8, I had read all the episodes from 1 to 7. Before I got there, I had read all those for season 2, and I couldn't see anything, but I read them all. So I mean,
the episode that you did Under the Cloak of War, which is a phenomenal episode. It's truly a phenomenal one, and it's phenomenal in multiple levels. I mean, there's the flashbacks, which is a wonderful sci-fi war film, which I must admit, I kind of felt like that needed to be its own series, mini series or something, because it had those layers to it that you thought to yourself, let's live here for a little while,
Yes. There was so much, by the way, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there was so much on the cutting room floor from that stuff. I'm so sad that a lot of that didn't make it in there. Hopefully it'll end up in some other episodes or something. Maybe it'll end up as little pieces of flashbacks and stuff. But we shot so much stuff for that episode that, obviously everything wasn't going to make it in. But yes, to speak to your point, some of that war stuff, and hit the floor, and I was like, oh, that's not in there. Oh, it's too bad. Such a great scene. But
can you share with something your favorite part, or your favorite scene that got cut?
Let's see. One of my favorite in that show, in that episode, one of my favorite scenes. Well, there's the ending, right? So there's the ending that the ending that aired. I really love that ending. But I shot every ending. So I shot everything that happened inside the room where you don't see it. So I shot versions of, him grabbing the knife and killing him, and Babs grabbing the knife and killing Mr. Bob Wisdom there. And then there was a version where Bob Wisdom, killed him, and there were so many different versions. There was a version where it was an accident, they were struggling for the knife. So there were so many different versions, and it's interesting to see. Hopefully we'll see that again, because we didn't see inside the room. Hopefully, next season 3, we'll see what happened inside the room. Maybe they'll do a retreading of it, and we'll see what happened inside the room. That'll be good to see. And then I think on the planet, there was a scene that didn't make it in, and it was a scene between Babs, between Dr. Mbenga and the ensign, the guy that they were operating on, and the open heart surgery, and where he was, talking. He's talking. I think he's talking about back home, but it was a longer version. In the version that we have now, it's a shorter version, but it was a longer version. And then you see also a lot more of the battle that's happening on the planet in the background. So you see, birds of prey coming in, strafing stuff, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. But that didn't make it in there, and it's too bad too. So stuff like that. Stuff like that. I would have loved to see more of that stuff.
And I mean, it was so incredible. Like I said, especially like I said, you have the Wartha stuff, but it kind of, I don't think, and I may be wrong, but I don't think we've seen a lot of the Klingon War in Star Trek prior to that moment, the actual war itself.
A lot of talk about it. We've heard a lot of talk in all the other series. We've heard a lot of talk about it, but we have not seen it. And you're right. I think a whole episode dedicated to that would probably be really good. because a lot of people hit me up about that afterwards. They're like, "Wow, they're fighting a ground war on Star Trek," and I was like, "Yeah." It's like, how did you do an episode where they're fighting a ground war on Star Trek? I was like, "I know, right?" So I mean, I think a lot of people were curious about that. Like, why is there a ground war on Star Trek? And I love that there's a ground war in Star Trek. So I think we should see more of that.
Well,
I agree.
it just makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
there's in on this planet, there's no city that's been able to be controlled by by pure air support. You always need troops on the ground to secure an area. You assume a planet is just a larger version of the how you would conquer a city. You need troops on the
Exactly.
ground, so that just makes sense. This makes
I just think I've never really seen it. So I was thinking about that. And friends of mine telling me, "No, we've never really seen it." Actually, obviously there's TOS. There's a TOS, there's original series where you got Kirk and Spock down there shooting people, stuff like that. But it's just them visiting the planet and from shooting, but never like a full on war scenario.
hmm.
So it's always in somebody's ships. They're always up there, talking to each other from ship to ship and having this little moment. So I agree with you. Put that in the suggestion box. We need to see the Klingon War.
Well, I mean, especially when so much of Star Trek, in the episode, maybe because just the idealism of Star Trek, it's so I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It's always sterile. Like I said, it's nice ships, air fighting, which is it's sort of like your episode was almost like seeing the old medieval sword fights where people had to see each other. They had really first started to really fight each other.
Yes.
Most Star Trek is that nice sterile. The ships do a little shooting at each other, some damage, things move on, but it's very clean looking.
Yeah.
What is it like to show the darker side of Starfleet conflict, and how do you weave that into the idealism of Star Trek and Starfleet is supposed to be?
Let me tell you something. I'm glad you asked that question because I love the darker side to Star Trek. I love that there's like a SEAL Team 6 in Star Trek. There's a strike team that will go out and get rid of enemies. And I always, you'd always thought like in your back of your mind. And yeah, I mean, Discovery kind of ventured into it a little bit, with Michelle Yeoh's character a bit, but this is like, okay, Mbenga was part of that team. And he even created a drug so where he can take more damage and his adrenaline was jacked up to the highest level it could. So therefore he could fight longer and harder than the Klingons and kill them. So which is hard to do. Hey, you and I both know a Klingon's hard to kill. So I loved exploring that because I always wanted to see that. I always wanted to see. I think one of the movies I think it was actually the remake of the Wrath of Khan. They went into it a little bit because there was that ship that what you call it had was it the Khan one?
Oh yeah, that's it's Into Darkness with the guy who played RoboCop.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Peter Weller.
Peter
Weller. Yeah. So Peter Weller had that that stealth ship, the ship that was like that they sent on the mission to go kill people. It was a Federation starship, but it really wasn't a Federation starship. It was like, and we got better weapons, and it was a starship of war. It was a war star. It wasn't like the Explorer starship like the Enterprise. It was like, listen, we're going here and we're gonna shoot shit up. We're gonna kill people. We're gonna destroy planets. We're gonna do damage. And I love that. And I love that now in my episode of Stranger Worlds, I got to really get deeper into that, into those kind of characters. Now with the people that boots on the ground, like, look, we're gonna go out here, we're gonna take this drug, and we're gonna just go and kill a bunch of Klingons. We're just gonna kill a bunch of Klingons. We're gonna use our phasers, and we run out of those. We're gonna pull our knives out. We're gonna kill them with those. We're gonna hand-to-hand combat them. And I thought that was great because we needed to know that. Up until then, it sounded like the Starfleet was always squeaky clean. Hey, we're just here to explore and prime directive. We don't want to, do this. But you know what? Push comes to shove, they're gonna come. They're gonna be like, okay, well, Enterprise is leaving, but we're gonna send another ship to kick your ass. Enterprise may be leaving, but here comes another ship right behind the Enterprise that did cleanup detail. Like, okay, I love that, and I think we should see more of it. I think we should see more of it in the Star Trek world and in the mythos and the whole world that is created of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry Star Trek. We should see more of that because I think it's time. I think it's time. And, if I may say the dreaded word Star Wars, if you got you got the Jedi, you got the Sith too. There's always, and I get that they're like saying, okay, well, the Federation and then the Klingons are our version of the Sith, are our bad guys, but not really. I think there's a version within the Federation that's like, hey, we go out and we do the bad shit for you guys. Remember us, don't forget us, because when Enterprise leaves that bad planet that was messing up everybody in Enterprise and killed a couple of Enterprise members, we send this other ship there to go and say, hey, so what'd you say? What'd you do? What'd you do to Enterprise when we were looking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think it started. They had some scenes with Section 31, and the thing with that, I mean, Star Trek. I love the ideal of Star Trek, but the adult version of Star Trek has to have that version that goes, because so we're gonna roll around in the muck so you can have your perfect world over here. I mean, that just kind of it just is the adult way of envisioning how a world like that would have to exist. Yes, you have this world, that wants to do good. Yes, you have a group of people who want to just explore, but for you to have that, we've got to have that. This over here.
Because it makes you always wonder, like, well, why are everybody in the universe so scared of the Federation? They had to make deals with the Federation. There's got to be a reason why, because the Federation will kick your ass when needed.
Yeah,
your ass will be kicked. So we have to, and I'm glad we're, like you said, with Section 31, we're starting to see those people, the ass kickers of the Federation. That's like, okay, yeah, is Kirk gone? Kirk's gone. The Enterprise out of here, right? Okay, now we're here. Put them up. So I love that.
And I really, and the one thing I was wondering about is, in discussing the episode, right, and discussing who would be have the history in the Klingon War. How did you decide? I mean, obviously M'Benga, obviously Nurse Chapel.
Yeah.
But how did you decide which other characters would be involved? And I was actually kind of surprised by which characters were involved. Like number one.
Like Ortegas was involved.
Yeah.
So it's the three of them really. So it's M'Benga, Chapel, and Ortegas. And then there were ones, like I said, that I think where you're heading, that were not involved at all.
Yeah, like for instance, like some Una. Like, could you think, once again, she's someone who's been in Star Trek Starfleet for a while. How did she avoid that situation? How did Pike avoid getting involved in that?
That's a good question. I would probably, refer that question to my writer, Davey Perez. Davey did a great job on the episode, and Davey's one of the EPs of the show. But, he would probably know that even better than I, even though I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to that stuff, and I try to remember as much as I can. But Davey, who's hands-on writing it on a daily basis, would definitely know where those bones are buried and everything. But I agree with you. They're I wonder how more of the crew was not involved in the war. I mean, like you said, even Pike, and even especially when you would think, would have been involved in there, but a lot of them weren't. I mean, Spock wasn't.
Yeah, I'm saying that's my point. I mean, when you look at Deep Space Nine and the Dominion War, that crew of the Defiant and Sisko and all them, they were in that war. They were participating. They were 100% involved. Yes. How does a captain or some of the other characters not get involved in what you would think would be a significant danger to the Federation? So, I mean, I was wondering, I was like, what was the discussion between like getting Ortegas involved and making sure that she was the one that you wanted as well as part of?
Well, I think with Davey was the reason why Davey and they involved Ortegas was because Ortegas was a pilot. She's a pilot. So, and she was she's like one of the best pilots in Starfleet. And so obviously, you want to get the best people out there in the war that's going to save as many lives and kill as many people and keep people out of danger. And Ortegas was one of those. And Ortegas was one of those, okay, I fly in, boom, get out, get the people, put them in the transport, get them out, or I fly in, drop some bombs and get out of there. So it was, or we're having dogfights in space and killing numerous Klingons left and right in space, and which will mess your head up. That will mess your head up. And to be honest, also just to go back to your question a little bit, go back on another question you asked. One of the scenes that did get cut, that was a real big one that I felt I wish would have stayed, was an Ortegas scene, where Ortegas was having a conversation and kind of like explaining why and like what it all meant to her. I mean, there's that first scene on the bridge with Uhuru and Ortega's talking about Ra, talking about him, and he was a butcher of Jagal, yada yada yada. But then later on in the show, there was a scene that we shot where she gets into it a little bit deeper, and that scene got cut. So I was a little upset about that one getting cut. But once again, hopefully it'll be something that they resurrect. But it was such a great scene. So, and let me tell you something. Every actor on Stranger Worlds is phenomenal, phenomenal. Every single one, phenomenal. So dedicated to their craft. You would never think you would make it. You were making a show about outer space. You're literally directing them, and they're responding to your direction, and it's like you're making some Emmy. I felt like I was on the set of whether it be Succession or Game of Thrones or whatever the most Emmy-winning shows are. Those actors are just as committed, if not more, because they're acting against a lot of blue screen and things that aren't there, and there's effects that aren't even there yet, and they're just giving it like 100%, going above and beyond. So shout out to my Strange New Worlds, cast.
Well, I mean,
and shout out to Davey Perez, the writer of my episode. Shout outs to WGA and SAG out there striking and for a fair deal. So shout out.
And he's welcome to come on the show, by the way. I always would like to have a writer of the show on as well. So shout out to him to come on the show. It's an opening.
Exactly. Once the strike is over, he'll come on. Once the strike is over.
I would like to think so. So I mean, and talking about the great actors, obviously the actor that to me honestly shown the brightest in this episode is Babs. Don't want to try the last name because I can't probably.
Yeah, don't do it.
Babs. Dr. Mbenga, for those of you who don't want to try the last name. Obviously, he was the heart of this episode. In many ways, the muscle of the episode, too. I mean, he was basically the star of, and his main character arc is his. So we talked to the actor about how to approach that arc over the course of the episode. And also, I mean, because you also have him in two time frames, him during the war, you have him years after the war, and then you have him kind of experiencing it on some level in his head again. So what was the conversation like with him and how to approach the arc?
That was really, it's interesting you bring that up. That was really approached from the standpoint of PTSD and how it affects soldiers right here in current day America, and and wherever beyond Ukraine, Russia, everything. So dealing with that was our main focus. And Babs did a whole bunch of research. So did Jess Bush. Babs and Jess did an amazing amount of research on what PTSD does, and they talked to actual soldiers and military personnel who have been in forward areas and been on the front lines, and also have been in like triage areas where doctors taking care of people knowing full well this one's not going to live, this one we can possibly save, okay, these are the ones we can save. I mean, that takes an immense toll on your mental health to literally have to choose who's going to live and who's going to die in a war zone, because based on what you can and cannot do. So Babs and Jess did the work, and would come back to me and Davey with videos from YouTube and documentaries, and and then they would show me texts from different soldiers, and well, this is what this one said, and yada yada yada, and emails. So they did very deep dives, and so did I. I did a deep dive as well. And then we would all be on set comparing notes. Okay, well, this is what one person did, and this is what the other person did. And what about this? And because they wanted it to be and I did as well. We all wanted it to be as realistic as possible. It's not just some space show, and we're going to turn into space PTSD. No, this is like a real soldier PTSD. This is real stuff that real people are going through. And after the episode, to be honest, I got a bunch of great emails and text messages and DMs from ex-soldiers who were like, Jeff, that show, your episode meant a lot to me, and it really affected me, and that's how I had to cope. And this thing that Babs did with his chest and doing that was something that a soldier had imparted, to Babs. And it helps, like when your heart rate is up, if your hand is just doing it at a slow speed, you can get your heart rate to match that. And just so you can calm yourself down from doing something, that might be out of character for you in, a regular civilian environment. So I got to give it up to them for doing the work and doing the research, and which is what they did. A lot of work, a lot of research.
And in thinking about his character, there's obviously got to be the question of with Dr. Mbenga, what amount of him is the doctor and which amount of him is still the soldier, because obviously apparently his feet have been dipped very much in the blood of being a soldier, and consider what he's done. So where did you
really dipped?
Yes. So where, like, when you're developing, like, where did you feel that he mentally was? Still fully a physician, or was he still very much the doctor? I mean, the soldier.
That's interesting, because when we shot it, obviously, like I said, David, Perez, the writer, did all the pre-thought, process of it. But when we shot it, I made sure when we had the flashback days, where we tried not to do any mixing of those days, meaning, have to put Babs in a mindset of him being in a flashback, and then after lunch, oh yeah, now you're going to go and be, present day Mbenga. And we're trying to avoid that because, we didn't want to create a clash for him of having to be able to have that mindset in and then try to switch over to other, because that's an immersive mindset. So like you said before, to be dipped in like blood, basically, of being this ex-soldier, ex doctor in a forward area, and then now also being a doctor, on a relatively safe starship that's not at war. That's just exploring space now. We're not at war. We're in exploration mode. So those are three different modes that he had to be. Obviously the mode of, okay, I'm taking the stuff and I'm going to go out and kill some Klingons. There's that mode, and then the mode of, I'm a triage doctor in a forward area, and I'm in the middle of a skirmish, and I have to literally triage out who's going to die. And we have to clear the transporter. We have to clear the transporter, and but there's somebody in there, doctor. He's got to go because we can't save him. So we got to clear him out of the transporter information desk. And that's what they did. So and that's somebody's life he just extinguished. And did he feel that? Yes, he did. Could he feel that in that moment? No, he couldn't, because there were incoming transport, which could have been a subtitle for the show, incoming transport, incoming transport, because they were getting so many wounded and so many, coming in, close to death or almost dead or dead when they, beamed him in. It's crazy. So he had to make sure, or we had to make sure that, and while shooting and in prep, that we scheduled it so that he didn't have to clash. His mindset didn't have to clash, and didn't have to face as much of that as possible. And so that we can keep his head clear to stay in the mindset of, okay, well, I'm dealing with PTSD right now in the present here on the Enterprise. I'm having an episode, or I'm, in the gym doing a sparring match with Ra and trying to withhold the urge to kill him, because I know who he is and what he did and what he's done and what he made me do, what I had to do. All of that was in his actions there. So we tried to separate the two as much as possible.
All right. So another actor that was phenomenal is Robert Wisdom, who played the ambassador, Doctor, who, I mean, once again, great character, known for at least a little while on the show as the Butcher of Jagal. And the thing is, as a director and discussing to the actor, once again, talking about approach, you have to be true to the full story of the character. Obviously, at the beginning, he's the ambassador who's this saint-like character who killed the Klingons, whatever, who did this thing to, save, I guess, children, some other things like that, this great man. But we know later on what he really is, the coward who ran away.
Yep.
So you got to be true to, the reality of the character, but you can't give away the game at the beginning. So
Yeah.
how did you approach working with him so so you could play both parts, the one that you thought he was going to be, and then but still not give away what he really was?
And that's that another. You're filled with the good questions today.
Thank
So
you.
for that, the answer to that question is, so with Bob, Mr. Wisdom is amazing. Obviously, it comes from The Wire to he was in this last two seasons of Barry on HBO. So he's an amazing classically trained actor, incredible. And so he and I had talks from the beginning. We were talking about it. And the way he saw Ra, I saw Ra a little bit differently. But in his mind, Ra was really earnest about it. He really wanted to make a change. He really wanted to make a change for the Klingons. He really wanted to do the right thing. He knew he was operating under a lie, but in his mind, he never thought in his wildest dreams that he would run into the person who really did the deeds that he was taking responsibility for. Never in his million. So he figured, I can tell this lie because no one's going to ever come forth and say they did this thing over me. So, I can run with this and this will help me get into the Federation. So in his mind, he did the wrong thing for the right reasons in his mind. In my mind, Ra, and we don't want about this. In my mind, Ra was a sellout. He was the person who was like, okay, well, who didn't want, okay, for example, if we think about, in war, when when you're on the losing side and now you have to, go up and, answer for war crimes, right? You have to go up against the Nuremberg trial or whatever, whoever, the United Nations put you on trial for war crimes. And he didn't want to face those. He didn't want to face that trial. So he decided, you know what? I see the end of this war coming. Somebody killed my men. I'm going to say I did it to the people that I know who are about to win and get on their side and ingratiate myself unto them so that they can let me live happily in this new society and where I wanted to make a change for anyway. Because there are other people that think like me. There are other Klingons that think like me. And I want to make a way for the other Klingons that think like me. I want to be an example to the Federation that you can take other Klingons in without them, killing you. Now, this is all like before Worf. Before we have to think about it pre-Worf. And everybody's thinking, but what a Worf? It's pre-Worf. So, these all Klingons in this era are just bad, evil beings. And, Ra wants to show that he's not an evil being. And also, some of us have the same beliefs as the Federation. And my thing is, that's a sellouts kind of a mentality of, I just want to go and get the good stuff because I see bad stuff coming. So I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to agree with these people now because I want to be a part of the winning team. And that's how he saw it. Now, the beauty of Davey, the writer, Davey saw it as that's how I saw it. Davey saw it as all things. A little bit of what I said, a little bit of what Mr. Wisdom said, and he felt like Ra encompassed it all. Ra, like anyone else living, wants to live happily. Like any being wants to live happily. And what's the quickest way to live happily? And most of the time, the quickest way to live happily is to be in agreement. To just be in agreement, and which is an interesting scenario. You can live happier by being in agreement. And what's it saying? My mom used to say it's like what'd she say? Oh, you get more flies with honey than vinegar, something to that effect. So he was trying to be honey, and I think that's how Davey saw it. Like, okay, whatever's going to get him to the next phase of his life, and and that's how it was. So with Mr. Wisdom and I, we were talking about it to that degree, and I always let him kind of lead with his thing of, I really want to be earnest in this. And I was like, okay, well, let's be earnest then. Let's be earnest. If we're gonna be earnest, then let's go all the way earnest. I want to see it in your face. I want to see it in your eyes. Let's go all the way earnest. I really want him to grab my hand. I really want to shake his hand. I really want to be his friend. I really want him to help me, bring the Klingon Empire and the Federation together. And I was like, okay, cool. If that's where we're gonna go, let's go that. But we also know this is a liar. This is a cheater. This is a person who will sell out whoever's next to him, to his left or his right. And that was our conversation. And she's like, okay, I'll definitely make sure to keep that in mind. But I just want him in these moments to be earnest because he really wants to cross a line. He really wants to cross the aisle and be a bridge. Great question.
There's so many good characters. And then another character, once again, who has a big moment at the end, in my opinion, is Captain Pike, played by Anson Mount. So two-part question. So first, how much do you think Captain Pike has sussed out what really happened at that moment between Mbenga and Ross? Sorry, I was trying to get to the minute, about to start over. And the other question is Captain Pike's response more of the actions of a good friend or a bad captain, or a good friend and a good captain?
It's good. That's another good man. You are cooking with gas today. Okay, so how much does Pike know? I don't think. Here's the thing. I don't think Pike. I don't think Captain Pike wants to know. I don't think he really wants. I think he's asking, and he wants Mbenga to tell him the truth. But But part of him doesn't really want the truth. He doesn't really want to know, because then he's gonna have to deal with certain repercussions. It's almost like if you look back in the show, season 1, it's almost like with Una, and and dealing with her and knowing full well what was going to happen. She was going to get, spoiler alert, what happened with Una, and there being this big trial. Obviously when he found out, had it been better if Una didn't tell him? Sure, probably. Because then he wouldn't have had to deal with reporting it and everything that happened with Una. And I think in his mind, he might have learned from that, and he was like, I want you to tell me, but don't tell. But I want to know. And I think that's to answer your second question. I think that's where the friendship thing came into play. I think his friendship, he answered it because he's not a bad captain at all. Captain Pike is not a bad captain, so I would never say he did it out of he was a bad captain. He didn't really, other captains would have did so and so, such and such. I can start running down the list of captains that would have did things differently. But I think he really values, and in that moment valued his friendship with Mbenga over the truth, and didn't want to dig any deeper, because certain captains, as you and I both know, certain captains would have dug deeper. Yeah, certain captains within this mythos that would have dug a lot deeper, and would have been like, okay, well, I'm gonna find out, even if it's just my own edification, my own knowledge. I'm gonna find out the real truth behind this. And which is what Laan was trying to say when they were talking with Chapel. And Laan was like, well, looked at him like, you believe what she's saying right now? Do we believe this? And Pike was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, this is happening. This happened, and okay. And then goes talk to Mbenga, and all right, well, cool. I'm gonna leave you now. I'm gonna leave you to your fixing of the bio bed here, and I'm gonna head out. But just know I'm still thinking about it. I'm not gonna dig deeper, but it's still in my head a little bit. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should. I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to get a drink and go to bed. Because you know what? Here's the thing. Pike's got his own problems that he knows are coming. And that's the interesting thing about Pike. He knows what's coming for himself.
Yep.
And he can't dodge it. He knows it's coming, which is an interesting place to be.
At least I really I love the complication that you brought to that episode. I think, like I say, I felt it's definitely Star Trek in a very grown-up way to view everything as real people. I do think sometimes Star Trek back in the day had all their characters be very perfect. They're all the perfect person. Everyone's perfect. It's like, well, one that can't be. They're not people anymore. I mean, on some level, part of me. Okay, I will say I love the Next Generation. I do, but if they're that perfect, there's no distinguishing between the human and Data, because they're both so level perfect that they're not people anymore. I do like that you gave that humanity back to people in that episode.
Yes, I love that, and you hit the nail on the head. And my thing is, listen, you brought up TNG now. So my thing is, with Picard, I love Picard. Picard always seemed a lot more perfect than even Kirk. And Kirk Kirk was, Kirk had a little edge to him. Kirk was, sleeping with every girl on the planet. Every time we went to a planet, some girl was like, some alien woman was like, Kirk had, some things with him. And what I loved about my episode is that Mbenga, now we know some things about Mbenga we didn't know, or we only suspected. Now we're like, okay. And then we thought, and the beauty of the episode, even, and not even get big up myself, I'm bigging up Davey Perez, the writer. But the beautiful thing about the episode was even though we wanted to be like, okay, well, that's in the past, you know what? Because we already knew that anyway, a little bit, from other episodes from season 1, when they took it and then they took the drug and then, him and Chapel fought their way out. There were episodes where you're like, oh, okay, well, he's got some history, but he's a different man then. The beauty of now is we're showing you now Rod's dead now. Not before, now, right now he's dead. Yeah. So now you got to choose, pick a side, public. Will you forgive this man if you find out he brutally killed this man? He brutally killed this Klingon. And, and went on with life. And fixed the bio bed and went on with life. Well, that's what we're asking. And and it speaks to what you're saying. He's a flawed character, but we do love him. We love him.
Right. And like I said, the great question to ask in philosophy, it kind of brings up the idea of, is there someone that can do something so bad that is unredeemable and does not deserve a justice for that character, as kind of Mega kind of alludes to in the episode. And the butcher of Jinga, sorry, I think I said pronounced it wrong, but Jagal, sorry. And then find out deserves it.
I'm the butcher of Jagal. I'm the butcher of Jagal. Not you. I killed all those guys. I killed him first, and I killed him, then I killed the other one. Yeah. And this one was the hardest to kill, and that one was the easiest to get. Man, let me tell you something. When he says all that, I'm like, whoa, Jack. Whoa. And then the beauty of it is, since we're at TNG again, like with Picard was the one I was talking about. He probably would have tried to get to the bottom of it. Whereas I think with Pike, he's leaning more into his friendship and like, you know what? Because he's also got like you said, he's got that little gray line. Now he's like, should I dig deeper? Should I leave it alone? If I was another captain, if I was Picard, I would probably go deeper. But I'm not Jean-Luc Picard. I am freaking Captain Christopher Pike, and I'm leaving it alone because I love this man. He's my friend. And I'm going to, go out of here and, we'll talk about it later at later dates. And because I love your reveal to him, it's like, hey, well, what if I did kill him? What would you, I love when Benga said to him, I'm glad he's dead. I'm not, it was all great stuff. So well written, so well acted, and so well directed, I might add.
It was. And I'm gonna say, well, my favorite Star Trek really is Deep Space Nine, and it does make you wonder what Sisko would have done back, because Sisko had that darkness to him as well.
Yes, he did.
I can't remember the name of the episode, but the one where he tries to was it frame the Romulans by with Andrew Robinson's character,
yes,
Garrick.
Sir. Yes, sir. And that's why I didn't bring up Sisko, because Sisko would have killed that dude too. Sisko would have been like, you know what? And Sisko would have been like, hey, they would have had a drink. They would have been like, he would have looked around. They would have been like, yeah, good going, way to go. Michael Burnham too. Captain Michael Burnham would have been like, you did what? You killed him? You had no choice, though, right? You had no choice, right? You had no choice. Okay, cool. Break. We're out of here.
But like I said, it was a great episode. Obviously, season 3 started filming before the strike, if memory serves. Do you know if you had an episode to direct in season 3?
Season 3 has not started filming.
It hasn't.
Everybody went up. Everybody went up there, and they were about to film, and then right when the strike happened, they got shut down.
Do you know if you have an episode to direct in season 3?
I do not know as of yet, because there's no schedule. And once the strike is over, which will hopefully be soon, fingers crossed, it's going to be literally like a tsunami of like, what about everybody? This job, that job, you do this. All the directors, every director is going to be trying to figure out what their schedule is going to be. So sadly, I do not know yet. And then also, I don't know what's going to happen with my show, Yellow Jackets, in regards to when we're going to come back, because my first obligation contractually is to Yellow Jackets. So I won't know whether or not I'm going to be able to do A Strange New Worlds this season of season 3. So I don't know yet, But I got my fingers crossed, and I'm hoping, because I love the show, and I would love to come back. And I love, Chris Fisher, the producer director on that show. He's amazing. He was the one who brought me there, and I was so happy to work with him and work for him and work underneath him as a director. He's a producing director, so it was a great experience. So I would be more than happy to go back.
Well, Mr. Byrd, it was an absolute honor to talk with you, sir. Whenever you work on another project, come back on and talk about it, okay?
Definitely, we gotta do Jeff squared, man. You can't stop the Jeffs.
Indeed.
Me and you can't stop the Jeffs. Thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time. I appreciate you. I appreciate you loving the episode and watching it and the whole nine. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll tell Davey, the writer, and I'll tell all the actors that you loved it. I know they can't come on now because of the strike, but once the strike is over, I'm gonna direct them right here to you.
I really appreciate that. You've been absolutely awesome. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.